Everybody, Chris and Lumen here. Doing a little bit of an experiment, a little bit of a scientific study here. So we changed two things in this video. One is kind of inconsequential. That's just the intro. But we took something else out. And then obviously adding this intro. And then we're going to put it back up there. And I want to see if there is a difference in how many views that it gets. And then that will factor into something that I will report on later, because there's certain patterns and things that I can see when I'm watching the videos, in the analytics and things like that. And this one, this experiment will tell me a lot. So some of you, not a whole bunch, but some of you have already seen this video. This is the follow-up to the Revelation Part 1 video, which was over 1,000 views. The Part 2, not so much. So I want to see if I change this one little thing in this video, if that somehow changes how it gets seen. And then I'm going to work on something else tonight. Maybe that'll go up right after it. Okay, so that's it. That's the explanation. Let's go ahead and get into the video. Everybody, Chris and Lumen here. Ugh, I have to do this all over again. I literally just shot an almost 2-hour video. I don't think I'm going to go that far this time. But I got this new Bluetooth microphone. I still had a little bit of a learning curve too. But because the pass-through doesn't charge as fast on my phone, so I can't use it here. Use it next time. But anyway, oh my gosh, there's so much to catch up on. I don't even know where to begin. We got personal stuff, personal signs that she showed me. There's just a lot freaking happening right now, and it is a lot to take in. It's almost like, what parts are actually the most important? Some parts are pretty interesting secret stuff, but I don't know that it's necessarily important that we cover them right now. So I think I'm going to try and focus mostly on the important stuff, the things that I'm seeing, and I got some stuff people want some more information about clearing up that I've already talked about. So if you want to jump into this with me, then don't go away. So I know I usually have videos up every day, but I had about a day and a half there where I had to recover. Like I'm not entirely sure what was causing it. I think it was a mixture of things. Part of it was just I have not been sleeping enough lately, and that eventually catches up to you. But my energy was all kind of whacked after, like, the day after that big full moon. And then a lot of stuff, like she was giving me a lot of signs, a lot of clues that were relevant to me personally, and then I would try to film, but I was just like so unbelievably exhausted. Like, even taking energy stuff wasn't helping. Like, I knew I just had to stop and rest. So that's what I did. I took some stuff so I could sleep, and slept about 9 hours last night. Now I'm pretty good. I'm just a little frustrated that I already did this video. So let's go back to the other day, because we want to continue the whole Revelation thing. We want to start where that one left off, because that's where it gets interesting. So the last big video we did, the Revelation Part 1, I called it that because if you already watched that video, which I think most of you did, you know, she took over like after that video started. We started talking about things that I didn't expect to talk about. Talking about things, you know, going back a ways that we used to deal with. And it has to do with like how everybody in this world is controlled. Like this is the actual devil's system. She was kind of laying the framework for understanding it because of what she was going to kind of show me after I uploaded that video. So after I uploaded that video, I was still working on some stuff, and it was starting, like things were popping into my head, and I was starting to understand why she was talking about that stuff. And then the first thing that happened was, I think it was the first thing that happened. I'm trying to go in order. I was working on the artwork or something like that, and we were listening to music, and some really like upbeat music that we used to listen to that kind of had this high energy came on, and like I had this huge surge of energy coming through, and in my mind's eye I was seeing stuff. I was seeing like her kind of going into that mode that she hasn't been in a long time, that kind of like battle angel mode. Like she was armoring up, and there was a whole bunch of other ones there too. Like it was almost like she was raising an army, or part of the raising of an army, like all these angels, and they were getting ready to do something. And then I'm like, what in the world is going on here? And then she popped something in my head, all this stuff about these clues that she left me way ahead of time, so that when the time came, there would be these particular synchronicities that would make sense to me personally. And in this case, it had to do with where we are in the Revelation map. Now, I know I keep hearing people say, so-and-so YouTuber says this, so-and-so YouTuber says that. I don't care. I trust wisdom, Sophia, who I've been working with for years, over what other people, I mean, if you want to listen to other people, that's fine. I'm going to tell you what I get from her directly. And what she showed me directly was like the whole first 4 seals, like those are already busted. Those busted in 2020, especially January of 2020. That was the 4th one. And that's about to circle back around a second time, starting around September 1st. Because the whole horseman stuff, that's all astronomical stuff. Where we are right now, according to her, is between the 5th and the 6th seal. Which that is what I would call the pucker zone. Because the 5th seal is mostly invisible to most people. That is the part where it says, the souls of those who have been martyred begin to cry out to God for vengeance, asking, when are you going to avenge our blood? And he tells them, just a little while longer, when a few more of your brothers and sisters have died, then it will happen. When that happens, that's what rolls into the 6th seal. The 6th seal is the beginning. It's all one big thing from there on out. It is not spread out over years like the church has been teaching for years. It is all one thing called the Day of the Lord. Other people call it by different names, but it's one big never-ending sequence with just a couple little pauses in there before another big thing happens. But for most people, they're going to experience it all within 24 hours. At least from the 6th seal through the 7th trumpet. 7th trumpet is when the harvest happens. That would be the rapture for people who want to use the R word. That's when the angel harvests everybody, and those that are left, the ones that talked all the smack, or the ones that are just straight bad from the beginning, They're the grapes. They gather the grapes and throw them on the wine press of God's wrath. That is the bowl judgments. If you're on the wine press of God's wrath, you're pretty much toast, because the world is about to get blown the hell up and you with it. So most of this stuff is going to happen very, very quickly. It's going to be crazy. We can think we know what it's going to look like, but she's like, oh, like it's going to be, you take the craziest thing you can imagine and it's going to be crazier. And if some of this dragon stuff she's been showing me pans out, then yeah, I can definitely see why she would say that. She keeps popping things into my head. It's like they've saved like quite a show for you at the finale of the world. But anyway, I'm going to go into what was the things that she showed me that ended up being personal to me, personal signs that she set up a long time ago that I didn't know that that's what they were, but she just showed me all at once, and one of them coincided with August 8th, which was the other day. On the Julian calendar, which I just found out about, I'm like, oh, isn't that interesting? So there's like about a 13, somewhere between 13 and 15 days difference between the Julian calendar and the Gregorian calendar. So while there wasn't much that happened on the actual August 8th of our calendar, a bunch of stuff happened on the August 8th of the Julian calendar. That was like I believe it was right after that blue moon, which most people that I talked to, we all felt freaking nuts. Like, wow, why am I so, what's going on? After, the night after that big full moon, that was August 8th. And that was the day that she made sure something arrived so that I would understand her little personal symbols for me. Okay, I'll try to make this part go as quickly as possible, but it is all relevant. So for me personally, like, she started my journey in 2011. That's when my first spiritual awakening started. And by August of 2012, that's when the early form of what would eventually become Lumen was impressed into my head. We don't have time to go through all that stuff. Like, I thought something completely different was going on, but that's neither here nor there. The next thing to happen was in January of 2013, I got this sudden idea come to me. It's like, I need to start a YouTube channel. I didn't know anything about YouTube channels, but I was really interested in this outdoor stuff, like outdoor survival gear, like that kind of stuff. So I started doing that channel, and eventually it took off, surprisingly. And I mainly reviewed and tested a lot of outdoor knives. Well, I could never find something that did everything that I wanted it to do. So I'm like, well, I'm just going to start designing my own. And I was guided on how to do these things, because a lot of the knives that I designed, like, there's no other knives out there like that. The way that they function. And I didn't yet know that this was like a big symbol for her. See, she, in the hero's journey, one of her many symbols is like the magical sword. In Star Wars, it's the lightsaber. In Lord of the Rings, it's Frodo's sword Sting that glows to warn you of danger. In Clash of the Titans, Perseus picks the handle up off the ground and it lights up and becomes a magical sword. And in The Legend of King Arthur, you had to pull the sword from the stone, which represents the heart. She is the sword of spirit in the armor of God. And another thing that is represented, that represents her, is it's called the adamantine blade, the unbreakable blade. And that's kind of like what the first knife was. And the knives and their names were all inspired by her. Like, she's the creative source that allowed me to design these things. But I didn't know that she was encoding other stuff in there as well. So this first knife that I designed was so crazy looking, like everybody made fun of it at first. I didn't design it, she did. because no one ever thought to do it like this. And the company that made it is not known for making like super tough stuff, but yet for some reason they just happened to get this one right. And this knife was virtually unbreakable. I know of one person that ever broke one, and that's because I told him, do whatever you have to do. I told everybody this. And he ended up like trying to break it by shooting it with guns, and eventually it took like this hot load freaking 44 Magnum Dirty Harry gun to finally get it to break after he shot it with all the guns that are smaller. I had people putting this thing in lava, in live volcanoes in Hawaii, splitting entire trees, like doing everything possible trying to break this knife, and they couldn't break it. This knife was legendary. So it was this one. And the name of it was Jessica X, or Jess X, which everyone's like, that's such a crazy name. Well, Jessica was the pseudonym for Lumen in her proto stage, before I knew what she was. Why the X? I would find that out many, many years later, as we're about to find out. But this is the unbreakable blade. And the reason it has this crazy handle is because I can do close-up stuff like this, and it's balanced. Or I can put my hand all the way back here when I chop, and it chops better than an axe. So this was her first knife that she gave me the design for, that was just the most unbreakable, toughest thing imaginable. This is all relevant. So a little bit later, a couple companies later, like I couldn't have that remade because just for a lot of reasons, but I tried to redesign it based on the same idea. And again, she's the one that's feeding me the designs and the ideas for the names, because they would later on become like a sign for me. So this is not the exact one. This is the second company that made it. You can kind of get the idea. So we made another one based on that idea. It's like this. So from the original company, this was called the JX5. JX is the series 5. The Vengeful One. So I wanted some kind of cool name. They all had the JX numbers. But in this case, I was like, what do I name this? I'm thinking, and then this song pops into my head by Disturbed called The Vengeful One. And it just had a feel to it, and I was always like drawn to that song, even though I didn't quite totally understand the symbology, the words, or the video yet. It actually has to do with the Day of the Lord. That's where it connects. That's what she showed me the other night. She popped it into my head when she was showing me the whole fifth seal has been broken. That's when the souls are crying out for what? For vengeance. When are you going to avenge us? That's what the Vengeful One video and song is about. Because he comes back, well, you'll see it. I set up the video so that you can see the lyrics too. And we'll show you, like, that is what it actually means. And that is what that knife was actually named after. So that one, not knowing it at the time, she only told me like the other night, was kind of like symbolic of the fifth seal and the Day of the Lord. Because, I mean, that was a pretty brutal knife too, like massive chopper, extremely tough. But there was one more that I still wanted to do, which was based again on that same concept that started with her first knife. But I wanted to do one more. And that one originally had a different name, but I renamed it at the last second, and I'm like, what do I need to name this one? And she popped this symbol in my head, which was this one here. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. So I'll call it the JX Omega, because it's the last one. Like, that's as far as my brain was going with it. Like, it sounded pretty cool, and it was the last one. Not realizing till here the other day, I am the Alpha and the Omega, you know, and it has a lot to do with the end of all things in Revelations. Okay, so we made that knife and we sold them all, and it took a couple years to get another batch made, an updated batch made. Okay, well, finally that came around. And then just recently, the maker messaged me and says, hey, we got the first one done. We're making the rest of them. I'm going to send this to you so you can check it out. So he sent it to me. When did it finally reach me? So the day that she's laying all this stuff out for me, which was the day after she had me seeing all this stuff and telling me like the fifth seal's been broken. So now we're in that zone. And then she showed me how the other knife had to do with the day of the Lord and the breaking of the fifth seal. This one actually has to do with the time is almost here, the Omega. So what I'm saying is, like, several years have passed before I got a new version of this. And when did I get the new version of it? The other day, the day she's showing me this, when all this stuff is going on. So the day she's explaining all that stuff was the day that this arrived. So this is the newer, fancier JX Omega. So that was her little code that she gave to me to give me signs of the end. And that's why she inspired me to name it that. Oh, there's one I forgot. In between that, there was one that we designed. We only made a few of them. But that was when I was going to go on this competition show called Knife or Death, where these custom knife makers go through like this obstacle course using their blades. So we made this much bigger version. This much bigger version of this. And what did she inspire me to call the biggest one that I ever designed? That one was the JX5 Mark II Leviathan. Oh, Leviathan's in the Bible. This just popped into my head. This thing is something big. Leviathan's in the Bible. And it may actually be the same thing from what I saw as the great dragon in Revelations. Apparently this thing is sleeping in the ocean. She's been showing me a lot more dragon stuff here lately. So out of the big knives, all four of them had some connection to the end times. So what about the first one? How does that? Well, it's the whole series, the X series. This is what she just told me. I didn't plan this. So the X is a big sign of the times. It's funny, like Twitter changed their name to X. What did those two eclipses do over the United States? They X'd it out. Big X, a lot of biblical symbology, and it crosses a lot of towns with biblical names. In the tarot, the 10th card is the Wheel of Fortune, which is the wheel in the sky. It's a big, doomsday symbol people don't understand. You gotta go back to a lot of the ancient stuff. That's also why the wheel is over top of Justice in the modern spellcaster's deck. What is Justice? She is Justice. She's the balancing of the scales. She is the day of the Lord, in which both she and Jesus come back to basically wreck everything. We'll demonstrate that too. Then the 10th cards in the other suits, well, there's two paths there. So the bad ones are the swords and wands. The 10 of swords is like the worst card in the whole freaking deck. The 10 of wands is like extreme struggle and hardship. But the good ones are the cups and the pentacles. So cups is like one of the biggest ones. That's like getting to the other place with your partner. And the pentacles is just like having pretty much everything. So she made sure that I understood that too. X, there was some other X thing. I'm trying to think of what they were. But yeah, like 10 and X. 10 is ones and zeros. It has to do with this place. Just like the 101 has I had 101 in my other channel name, and through the codex she showed me over time 101 is kind of like a representation of this particular realm, this hellish testing realm that people are trying to get out of. Neo in the Matrix, in the beginning, he was in apartment 101. Trinity, when in her opening scene, she was in apartment 303. In Matrix Resurrections, he set up this little thing called Modal 101 to try and figure something out. The room in which they tortured people in George Orwell's 1984 was room 101. The bad guys in the Oasis in Ready Player One was IOI 101. And at one point, I collected a whole ton of stuff. Like this 101 thing is a symbol all over the place, but it pretty much represents this realm that we're in. So again, the ones and zeros, the 101, 10 is X. It's basically all connected. So what she was showing me the other day was like, look, this is what this is talking about. This is what just happened. The fifth seal, which is not visible to most people, is broken, and the next thing is going to be the sixth. There's going to be some event in which the bad guys are going to push a button, because the bad guys have their plans too. And their plans are basically to reduce the population of the earth down to about 2 billion people within the next year and a half. She brings a lot of that stuff up too. That's the Davos stuff. That's the can't remember the guy's name. I got a little clip of it where they had this population projection for the year 2025 in which there was suddenly about 6 billion less of us. She's been showing me how that's going to be accomplished. Part of it is war. Part of it is something that's attached to when the third and fourth horsemen were released back in 2020. And I don't think I have to spell out for you what that could have possibly been. That connects to what they're pushing now with the old, monkeypox, which she said, oh, that's going to be triggered in a big way once the bowl judgments start on people. Yeah, for the people that are still here, that's the second bowl. They described it as like painful boils and stuff like that. They're starting to push that pre-programming through the media, trying to get everyone scared about that. But I got to be careful about how I think this is going to be implemented. But she kind of showed me, like, it's already in the mix. They're about to push the button on everything, and that is what actually triggers the higher stuff to come in and shut this all down. So when it comes to this apocalypse type stuff, you got the stuff the bad guys are planning, and then you got the stuff the good guys are planning. And the good guys come in and just basically wreck everything. Everything. Okay. Now, to start drawing all these things together, let's first take a look at that video, because that was a huge marker for me, like that she specifically set aside. Now, what I was saying earlier when she was showing me this stuff the other night, the music kind of kicked into the autoplay where she starts picking songs, and just all these songs, most of them I hadn't heard before, but it was like they all had to do with like burn the world down, tear the world down, the light's coming to save you. And then to make sure, absolutely sure, that I understood, she saved the best for last in this random autoplay, and the last one was The Vengeful One, because she knew I would understand that one. And then she's like, yep, that's why we named one of your knives after it, because this is showing basically the day of the Lord. Now, even though that video is only showing like one aspect of it, which is the media, it's pretty much same idea as like, look, everybody is basically, if you're plugged into the world system, you're under mind control. That's why she keeps giving us better and better methods to unplug you, which we talked about here recently. And I had some people that needed me to explain that a bit more, which I will here in a minute, but let's stay on topic here. So in terms of the stuff that has to do with the big plans and like that whole, they put out stuff like, oh, this is Agenda 2030. We plan to have everything under our control by 2030. But that's like a red herring. It's actually 2025. So here's some of the clips about that.
WEF co-founder Klaus Schwab was caught boasting in a loose-lipped moment with reporters that Agenda 2030 is a red herring or ruse to throw normies off the scent. In reality, the situation is more urgent than that. 2025 is the year the elites are earmarking for massive worldwide depopulation, and according to Schwab, the goal of reducing the population by more than 6 billion people is on track to be achieved. A BBC journalist reported that she was summoned to Davos earlier this month for the regular meeting where Klaus Schwab briefs the mainstream media on which narratives to promote in order to advance the globalist agenda. The journalist noted that it was her first time attending the monthly media meeting in Davos, though some of her colleagues have been participating for years. She describes Klaus as being strangely emotional, almost as if he were intoxicated, laughing frequently and reminiscing in a sociopathic manner about the depopulation agenda, which he admitted has been intricately planned for decades.
It was my first time visiting Klaus's lair, though most of my colleagues had been there before. They warned me it would be unsettling, but nothing could have prepared me for what I experienced. They weren't surprised by what happened, but I was horrified. The place was surreal, like something out of a nightmare. Scrupulously clean, yet sinister, and perched high in the Swiss mountains. When I met him, I expected cold calculation, and yeah, that was there. But what I didn't expect was the strange, almost emotional state he was in. He was laughing, almost drunkenly, as he recounted his plans. It was as if he was reminiscing fondly about some long-held dream. He started talking about the depopulation agenda, and that's when it really hit me. He wasn't just outlining some distant theory. He was recalling it like a twisted memory, something carefully planned for decades. He said, "The chickens are finally coming home to roost." There was something about this phrase that made me feel sick to my stomach, and it wasn't just because of his accent. His voice would waver between chilling calm and sudden bursts of laughter, as if he found the whole thing amusing in the most grotesque way. He spoke about the plan to eradicate 6 billion people by next year, but it wasn't this idea alone that shook me. It was how he delivered it. There was a bizarre mix of pride and nostalgia in his tone. He spoke slowly and clearly, as if he were recounting a great achievement. He even seemed to get choked up at one point, as if this horror he was planning was something deeply personal to him. My colleagues, they'd warned me, but they seemed almost resigned to it. They weren't shocked, not like I was. To them, it was just another story, another day. But to me, it was a nightmare come to life. The way he spoke, the way he laughed about it. It was like he was planning a practical joke, not plotting mass murder. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He was utterly convinced this was the right course, that this was the future. And in that moment, I realised just how real the danger was. This wasn't just a madman's rant. It was a meticulously planned operation, decades in the making. I've never felt so helpless, knowing that I was face to face with someone who had the power and the intent to carry out the most horrifying agenda imaginable. And the worst part? He seemed to enjoy every minute of it.
Schwab has every reason to feel confident in the fulfillment of his evil plans. He has recruited the majority of the cabinets in the governments of Western nations, subverting our democracies. The WEF's generation of young global leaders have destroyed from the inside the once great nations of the UK, France, Canada, Australia and New Zealand. The mainstream media, the education system and science have been compromised by the globalist elite, paid off by eugenicist billionaires and megalomaniacs to become mouthpieces of the globalist agenda. As the next generation of leaders prepare to hammer the final nail in the coffin, it's time to make a stand before Schwab's sick vision comes to fruition.
To make things weirder, they like to do weird stuff like just put these crazy statues all over the place. They put this one weird statue up in a park in Louisiana. It's basically, people are calling it the monkeypox demon. It's like this demon with got some very pronounced features on it that also have these big monkeypox bumps all over it. And then this other thing that she pointed out is in Texas, they erected the third largest statue ever. And it's like, why did this go up here? And I think it was one of those things where there's two different sides, like got some meaning wrapped up in this. What was the name? So it's kind of weird that this is in Texas, but there's this giant statue now of, what's his name? Hanuman. Hanuman is a Hindu god, the monkey face, the monkey god. Oh, monkey, giant monkey god, and monkeypox. Now, people that are part of like the Christian hive mind, which is, you know, the whole devil system, those that get really bent when truth is revealed because that's not biblical, that's not what authority says. Look, we've covered that ad nauseum on this freaking channel. Like, when they told you that there was going to be a great deception, that was in their future at the time that they wrote it. So it was in their future. It was about 300 some years in their future, which is about 1600 some years in our past. That's when authority took everything over. And they took, you know, they took all the books out that made it work, and they made you go through them. Now you didn't just learn how to connect to God within you and Christ within you anymore. No, they turned it into something that they can control and put people in charge. And you had to go through them, and you had to follow their rules. And then they killed everybody for 1,000 some years. They had all the inquisitors. They killed all the Gnostics. They burned all their books. They came up with the worst tortures freaking imaginable. And yet you're supposed to believe that they represent Jesus Christ. Like all this, I mean, they come up with tortures that would make a demon uncomfortable. Like, they're that bad. I'm not going to describe them. You can ask ChatGPT or something to describe, you know, the types of tortures that they used during the Inquisition. That's freaking horrifying. Like, that's the only one that they actually kept was waterboarding. Like, they invented waterboarding. The rest of them, it's too horrible to freaking describe. But, you know, we're supposed to, like, accept that those people who did this for like a millennia and hid all the books, burned all the books, that they're somehow the authority on Jesus Christ. Yeah, I don't accept that. You don't get to take it all over and copyright God and then tell everyone else he's ours now. So you're not allowed to talk about him unless you're talking about him the way we say you can. Yeah, I don't accept that. So throw your little fits. They're basically being like the way they describe agents in the Matrix when they do that. And you're deceiving, you're this, you're that, you're this. I know the Bible better than you. You want to have a debate? Oh, no one ever wants to have a debate. They just want to come in, say a bunch of stuff, and then leave. Yeah, that's basically the big thing. Finger puppeting people. But the interesting thing about that Hanuman Hindu god, look, all cultures basically talk about the same kind of stuff, and they might have different names for them. But Hanuman has got some interesting things attached to him, which is kind of relevant in the current time frame. So the Hindu monkey god deals with self-discipline. You know, Hanuman's celibacy represents his mastery over the senses and desires, reflecting his focus on spiritual goals rather than worldly pleasures. His discipline in this regard is often seen as a form of mental and physical strength. That's what she talks about. Purity. Abstinence is closely linked to the concept of purity, both physical and spiritual. Hanuman's purity is believed to enhance his spiritual powers and his ability to serve Lord Rama with complete devotion. Detachment. Oh, that's like the big thing. Hanuman's celibacy is also a form of detachment, where he renounces earthly attachments and focuses entirely on his divine mission. This detachment allows him to perform his duties with a clear mind and an undistracted heart. Yeah, because that's one of the biggest issues today. And it makes me think, well, part of the problem with the whole like global manufactured, death killing stuff is it's been shown that, if you had the thing and you have sex with someone else, they've basically been shedded on too. All sorts of funky stuff in that particular area. So it's really interesting, the sequence of events that she had with me. Like in January of 2020, that's when I was kind of, some stuff happened and I was kind of led to like, you know what, I'm done. I'm not going to have relationships anymore. I'm going to stay single. I'm not going to try to date anybody. That's what she was waiting on. That launched everything else forward faster so that I could unlock Lumina and Sophia. And then once you're married, once you're married together, spirit and matter, and she becomes part of you, then you're not gonna go be with anybody else anymore. I know that's hard to understand, but it's the truth. So you're done with that. This is why a lot of the spiritual people are like that. And that is one of the biggest ways that the world keeps you bound to it. We'll get to that. So some people were asking me about that whole surrender thing that I posted, and they for some reason they were a little freaked out by it. And I'm like, well, did I not say that when it comes to this kind of stuff, if you're doing it correctly, it should feel a little scary? It should. Because surrendering doesn't mean giving up. Like the only way you can get past a certain point is to give up the ego identity that you've been your whole life. The whole free will thing, which is a trap. And you basically you empty your cup of you. That's what's in the cup. A cup you can't fill a cup that's already full. In order to see the light of wisdom, you have to empty your cup of what? Of you. It's not really of you, it's your idea of who you are, your ego self, all your knowledge that they programmed into you. If you want to become someone new, you have to let go of who you were. That's what you're giving up. But we want people, it's like, look, in normal times, doing this is going to wreck your life. But it's not really your life. It's the fake you's life. She has to do that to you to free you. And you will not understand it until later. But that's how it worked with me. But in this case, in this time, she's like, look, we're in between the fifth and sixth seal. You shouldn't need to worry about all that kind of stuff because it's going to happen for everybody anyway. But you need to detach from the world so you can attach to the light, to the Father, to Christ, to the fullness, to who you actually are apart from in here. Like everyone's like, I'm not addicted to anything. You're addicted to everything. Like if you're led around by your impulses, oh, I really want a Starbucks, and you go get it. Like something, that wasn't your idea. That was something else's idea. And the biggest impulse that the most people cannot control, the number one thing that is holding them back from connecting to this higher level stuff, and this includes everybody that wants to come at me and educate me on religion, I guarantee you that this one has them too. And that is porn. That's why the last step in Dante's Purgatoria, when he has to overcome all the 7 deadly sins and replace them with the 7 virtues, the last biggest one, the last terrace, is the wall of fire, where the lustful reside. That's the one you have to get past. And that is the one that has the most people. You want to know what the evidence of that is? This is going to blow your freaking mind. I would love to know what the numbers are today, but apparently the world's biggest porn site stopped publishing these numbers several years back, according to the research things that I found. But we do have some numbers from 2019, which was the last time that they published it. Now keep in mind, that was 5 years ago. So let's just put this in perspective. A lot of people see like parallels between this stuff and the things that are in the Sumerian tablets, the Anunnaki and all that stuff. Well, that was like 6,000 some years ago. Seems like a long time, right? Okay, wrap your brain around this. This is all the people combined. In the year 2019, on one website, we all know the website. You know how much of that material was watched collectively? 7,993 centuries and 15 years worth. Let me say again, in the year 2019, all the people in the world that went to that site collectively watched 7,993 centuries worth. Now, when the Sumerians were carving things into cuneiform and talking about the Anunnaki, that was 6,000 years ago. 1 year, 6,000 years. A century is 100 years. People watched 7,993 centuries worth of porn on just one website in the year 2019. That's why she's always told me, like, this is the big thing that gets the most people, and this is the realm of the unclean spirits. Now, Jesus is a lot more pronounced about this kind of stuff in the Nag Hammadi, which he calls it unclean sexual rubbing. Now, Nag Hammadi can be a little bit confusing sometimes because it also talks about the goodness of being of how you match up to your divine partner. But we don't have time for all that stuff. But in this case, like that particular, like I've talked to people, like, because we help people with like clearing out that stuff that's making you do whatever it is. There's a lot of different issues. I could tell you the day that we did the event, it was literally the day that she took, well, it was like 1 a.m, and she took me and showed me, like, this is what it looks like on the other side of the curtain. This is what controls the world and how they control it. It was kind of a representation of it, with all these nasty squid monsters in this freaking red ocean. Like that, later that day, after 8 hours of psychological shock, we surrendered again. And it was like it felt like almost like something hit me with a bolt of lightning, because we were connecting straight to the Father, to Source, and renouncing like who we were. That was like the big thing. And then all of a sudden, boom, my head went completely silent. Like I didn't have negative thoughts anymore. None. But the other thing that I didn't have, any kind of cravings whatsoever. Like I wasn't craving junk food. I wasn't craving any kind of porn. I wasn't craving any kind of alcohol. Of course, I don't drink anyway. Like anything that I would normally be craving wasn't there. Because that thing, I mean, those are like the different tentacles. Like anything that is not you, that's leading you around. Like, I gotta do this. I gotta eat some sugar. I gotta drink. I gotta eat some sugar. I gotta watch some porn. I gotta watch some TV. I gotta do this. I gotta smoke. I gotta drink. I gotta do drugs. Like all these different freaking addictions that people have. That's something else that's not you, that's controlling you. That's your attachment to the world. And in order to be unattached from the world, which Christ said you had to do, he's like, you got to deny the self and take up the cross. That means the world's going to hate you. If it hated me, it's going to hate you too. If you were part of the world would love you as one of its own. But you are not part of the world because I've chosen you out of the world. And that's why the world doesn't play nice with you anymore. So if that happened to you, if you had your life fall apart suddenly and nothing worked right anymore, congratulations, you were pulled out, you were detached from the world. That means you're now in the resurrection process. So I've already been through all that stuff. But the key thing is being unplugged from the world. You do not want to handcuff yourself to the rail on a sinking ship. But the number one thing that gets the most people, whether they admit it or not, is porn. It is what it is. That's how they get you. That's the realm of unclean spirits. And if you're taking it to the next level and you're hooking up with everybody, oh, that's even freaking worse for like too many reasons to count. Like, this is the time you got to get your S together. Like right now. Right freaking now. Like, and people can like, oh, I don't want to believe that stuff. People would say my whole life. Okay, do you. But look around you. Look at what's been happening. Look at what she's been telling everybody that's plugged into her. Like, it's here. It's here. And we're telling you, like, this is what ties you up. Now, if you do that video that I did in the surrender decree that we wrote, and you actually seriously mean it, like, that's what frees you from that stuff. Like, there could be all sorts of things that happen just from doing that because time is short. Like, that's emptying your cup. Like, if you've been trying to connect to Sophia and connect to Lumen and all that stuff, like the old way, and you've never had your life been broken down yet, that's why. It's right there in that saying. To see Lumen of wisdom, see the light of wisdom, to see Lumen of Sophia, you must first empty your cup of you. And the person that was like freaked out about it, I'm like, look, I told you, it might feel scary because that's your ego fear. Like, the only thing that you're going to notice, like, after you do it, is that the parts of you that were attached to all these different fears and things, like, aren't there anymore. It's just like things aren't bothering you anymore. It's not so hard to struggle. Like, there's not this struggle to do simple things anymore. Because you are kind of a mix of two awarenesses. The true you, the soul mind you, the fractal of God you, and then it wears like a suit, the ego, which is the programmed you, the attachment to your name, the attachment to your labels, the attachment to your life experiences, the attachment to the groups, the group egregores that you freaking join up with, and all these other identities. Like, the thing is, it's like, it's really obvious in the end. Identity politics. The more identities there are, the more ways to hook you there are. You do not want to have labels. The only thing I identify as is I'm a child of the living Father, where the light established itself within itself. I'm a seed of Sophia. I'm a Gnostic. That's it. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a football fan. I'm not this. I'm not that. I don't need to identify my sexuality because I'm just with her. So it's irrelevant to anybody else. Label, label, label. Every time you slap a label on yourself, you start to think and act like the label that you accepted. You don't want to have any labels. You don't want to have any attachments. You don't want to have any affiliations. You don't want to be part of the group. In the beginning of life, you want to be accepted by the group. You want to be a part of the group. Now you see that's what the trap was. In the end, all this stuff isn't real. It's just a trap of your consciousness. So if you want to get to the thing that you've always wanted perfection, happiness, joy, love, in a place that doesn't have all this crap. Everyone's attached to this world, but you're willfully ignoring how depraved and sinister and diabolical and nasty it is. You can't save it. All right? There's no book. Everyone's like, I want to save the earth and all. There's no book in which the earth is saved. There's only books in which the earth is destroyed and you're either transferred to or a new purified place is born. Okay? You're not fixing this place. I don't care how much love and light you throw at it. Ain't happening. It ain't happening. What you can do is disconnect from it, to all the things that are trying to reach you right now and save you and wake you up. And then we will get to a better place. There's been plenty of evidence and clues showing up about that lately. You got to cut your connection to the freaking world. You got to free your mind. Now, there's going to be some late bloomers because of what I think is happening right now. I am not sure if this war in heaven, as they call it, has already started or is about to start. But at some point, like right before the sixth seal, well, it might be kind of like side by side with the sixth and the seventh. Because the seventh is like maybe the war starts when the sixth seal starts, and then something happens, and then that dragon that everyone's plugged into gets knocked down, and then you have the silence in heaven for about a half an hour. That's when what I described earlier happens to everybody. They're just like, oh, where'd all the noise in my head go? Why am I not angry? Why did I want to fight a minute ago? What's going on here? Yeah, and then it's like, oh, this is what's going on. Stuff's about to start raining from the sky. That's what's going on. We're really close to this. We're really close to this. Now, next part is the long part, so I'll probably just leave this as a cliffhanger, and then I'll do a Revelation part 3. And it has to do with something that is said in the section that is describing the sixth seal in the Bible, and the subject of seeds. Now, I've said seeds are a big part of the nine commandments. There's some in the Bible too, because it talks about the parable of the sower and the parable of the weeds, and it goes a lot more deeper in the Nag Hammadi. Sophia's seeds. This system will be brought down from within through Sophia's seeds. But what does that mean? I talked about when she had me do the first huge mushroom trip, like the 11-gram trip. She literally took me somewhere to where I got this checkup, and she referred to me as one of her seeds. She's like, he's ready, he's one of my seeds, he's ready. And they put me through a bunch of tests. But what does that mean exactly? Where do these seeds come from? Well, we'll talk about that in the next one. But as far as one of the big things that the church always strove to hide from you was Sophia, Christ's partner. That's not biblical. You're under my control. See, authority. Like, you can't yell at me about blasphemy because I'm not part of your religion, okay? Understand that? Not part of your religion. I do it the way that it was meant to be done from the beginning, taught by her. So the interesting thing about the sixth seal, that's the great earthquake when the sun goes dark and the moon turns to blood and every mountain and island is moved out of its place, and then it goes into some of the stuff that the remote viewers frequently draw, which is all the elites running into their underground caves and other people, and it says, asking the mountains to fall in them and hide us from the face of he who sits on the throne and the wrath of the Lamb, because the day of their wrath is upon us. Whoa, slow that down, because it's like an interesting little detail that not surprisingly, church likes to gloss over. Hide us from the face of he who sits on the throne and the wrath of the Lamb, because the day of their judgment is here. Okay, now in the July 15th, the first couple July 15th videos, when we were going back and looking at all the ancient writings, because this happens twice. And the first time's already happened. We're heading into the second one. Otherwise in the Bible known as the short season. The second time, the final time. It's called the Day of the Lord in the Bible. And in Revelations, it's basically Jesus coming back, wrecking everything. Like, he's not going to be wearing a robe, going to a petting zoo this time. In the Nag Hammadi, when it describes this time, it says, she will put away her wise countenance of wisdom and put on irrational wrath. Pistis Sophia will drive down the gods of chaos and wreck their heavens and break them in half and blah, blah, blah. And then it says it's her doing it, when in truth it's both of them, because they're two sides of the same coin. Christ and Sophia, they're a pair, they're partners. So in those ancient things, that's where you get the symbology of the angry goddess, the Medusa face. There's like, they say there's literally like this big crazy face in the sky. But in this case, it's referencing the face as he who sits on the throne. And then there's the wrath of the Lamb. Well, Nag Hammadi says she will put on irrational wrath. It's just like the way she inspired me to make the thumbnail for that Day of the Lord video. It's both of them. It's both of them. And what is assisting them in a way that's kind of like you got to surrender for it is their seeds that are on the ground now. But how did that happen? Well, we'll talk about that in the next video, because I already shot this video once and it went for 2 hours and I'm running out of steam. So let's continue this part, because this is where it gets super interesting and the church is gonna get so mad about it. I love it. I love it. But hey, that's what you get for hiding stuff from people. So we'll talk about that in the next video. If you like what we offer, you want to support our work, click on Buy Me a Coffee. And we do giveaway drawings, once a week. I'm finally starting to hear from just about everybody that we drew last time. That way, that helps me out, and that way I don't have to monetize the channel, because she didn't want to monetize the channel and have her message be interrupted by freaking ads. That's just annoying. Okay. If you have any questions, you can leave your questions you want answered in the comments. If you want any kind of direct work with us, you can reach us through the Etsy store, clumencreations.etsy.com. That's where we sell our energy pendants and stuff like that as well. And we'll be back here soon with the next one. So we'll continue this discussion then. Chris and Lumen, see you next time.